Question 25. Who was murdered in the scene described in the passage? There is no mention of any Mrs. Wheeler, so ignore this. Mrs. Salmon is the witness and not the victim, so ignore this as well. In this passage, it is mentioned that the witness had seen the accused on the steps of Mrs. Parker's house, and the crime is described as the old woman who was found battered to death. It is therefore very tempting to choose option B, because the accused was seen outside Mrs. Parker's house, where the victim, the old lady, was found. So the victim must be Mrs. Parker. But that cannot be inferred from the available information. It can only be inferred that the house where the victim was found belonged to Mrs. Parker. But why should Mrs. Parker be the victim? The old lady might be someone else who is living in Mrs. Parker's house, a tenant, a relative, or a friend. Since there is no specific information to say that Mrs. Parker was the victim, the best answer is cannot be inferred.